Hello everyone, thank you for being here. I don't know how your day has been, but I hope that the next few minutes will be a time of ease and tenderness just for you. Hoaica always welcomes you with all her sincerity. A new day began. The early sunlight pierced through the leaves, casting its glow over the rugged dirt path leading to Hoaica's old house. The place, leaning against the mountain and facing the wide river, was both beautiful and dangerous whenever the floods returned. That was why Hung and Hoaica had to find somewhere safer. Yet, this land still held countless memories. It was the place Hung bought for her, the place they once tended together with care. To abandon it felt impossible, and to sell it was even harder to bear. The soil near the stream was nourished by silt, so crops thrived effortlessly. Sugarcane, yams, sticky cassava, all grew lush and heavy with little tending. Looking at those fields, Hoaica felt a quiet gratitude not only toward Hung, but also toward Hoai and his mother. Without their shelter during her hardest days, she and Tony might never have made it. That morning, the sun blazed mercilessly, its heat searing the fields. Hoaica and Hoai wore long-sleeved shirts and white hats, yet sweat still soaked through their backs. Neither complained. Side by side, they worked patiently clearing weeds, cutting down dry sugarcane stalks, leaving the garden neat and refreshed. The sound of blades slicing through grass and hoes, striking the soil mingled with their steady breathing, forming a simple but heartwarming rhythm of labor. By midday, when the sun burned fiercest, they finally stopped. Looking at the tidy, green garden, a small satisfaction flickered in Hoaica's heart, but their work wasn't done. They still had to return to the old house, feed the chickens and rabbits, and begin replanting the vegetable garden. The way home was long, and hunger gnawed at their stomachs. They stopped at a roadside shop, bought a few packs of instant noodles. Hoaica smiled and said, "Just something quick to fill our stomachs. Once we're done this afternoon, I'll cook us a proper meal." Hoai chuckled. Weary but gentle, "Yeah, what matters is that we work together, eat together, that's happiness enough." Under the scorching noon sun, the two figures, one man, one woman, walked side by side, carrying their baskets. Their steps were heavy with labor, yet their presence together glowed with a quiet warmth. Inside the police headquarters where Hung worked, the air was unusually heavy that day. The announcement of a transfer decision had just been made, and the whole room fell silent. For 10 years, Hung had been tied to this place, working alongside his colleagues like brothers, sharing hardships, tackling countless difficult cases together. But now, his term had ended, and the order came from above. He would be reassigned. Holding the paper in his hand, Hung froze. The new posting was 130 kilometers away, far from home, far from everything. A storm of unease rose inside him. His family was already drowning in struggles, debts, the house, Hoaica. If he left now, who would carry the burden in his place? His superior saw the turmoil on his face and could only sigh. Patting Hung's shoulder, his voice weighed with regret, he said, "I understand. You're capable, diligent, devoted. For 2 terms we kept you here because we trusted you. But rules are rules. I'm sad too. We've been like family all these years." Those words stung like salt on an open wound. Hung sat silently, his eyes fixed on the decision slip, his hands trembling as they clenched. At last, he drew a deep breath and said in a hoarse voice, "Sir, I request permission to decline the transfer. Right now, my family has too many troubles. If I leave, I won't have peace of mind. I ask to temporarily resign. Later, when I can, I'll apply to return." The room stiffened in shock. The superior sat still for a long moment, then sighed deeply. "Are you certain? In this line of work, once you leave, coming back is not easy." Hung nodded slowly. The ache in his chest was unbearable, but his voice remained steady. "I've thought it through. I can't abandon my loved ones at this time." His superior placed a hand firmly on his shoulder, eyes filled with both sorrow and respect. "Very well, write me a letter. I'll forward it." In that moment, Hung felt the sky collapse on him, but somewhere inside, there was also a sliver of relief. He knew his career path ahead would be rough, but his heart told him, family is where he must stand firm. He folded the decision slip and tucked it into his pocket. As he stepped out of the meeting room, the late afternoon sun streamed down the long corridor, stretching his shadow heavy and slow. He asked the heavens again and again, his chest tight, his hands trembling as they gripped the railing. Why now? Why, when the house was unsettled, debts unpaid, when Hoai and Tony was still unprotected, why must he be sent away? A wave of helplessness surged through him, as though the whole world had turned against him. Tears threatened to fall, but he swallowed them back. A man carrying storms on his shoulders still would not allow himself to collapse. In a choked yet resolute whisper, he murmured, "Hoai, Tony. No matter what happens, I will never abandon you. I would rather lose everything, but I will not lose this family." Hoai and Ha were quietly walking toward the old house. The dirt road was rough and uneven, and as they walked, the two talked about all the things that needed to be done once they got there. Suddenly, the rumble of an engine sounded from behind. Turning around, they saw Ka on his way home from work. The moment his eyes landed on Hoai, they lit up briefly. He stopped his motorbike and offered with a gentle smile, "Such a long way, let me give you both a ride, it'll save you the trouble." Hoai hesitated for a moment, but Ha nodded, and soon the three of them were on the bike together. The wind rushed past their ears, and Hoai instinctively clutched her shirt front. A strange, indescribable feeling welled up inside her, part unease, part unfamiliarity, sitting behind the very man who had once been the shadow of her past. When they reached the old house, Ka froze at the sight before him. Since the day Hoai went missing, this was the first time he had returned. Wild grass had taken over, vines twisted thick across the fence, and the dry leaves rustled in the wind, whispering stories of desolation. Hoai stepped into the yard and sighed softly. "I was planning to clear it out, start a little garden, so that once Hung settles everything, our family could move back here." They sat down under the shed for a sip of water. Hearing her mention digging vegetable beds, Ka looked around, then suddenly suggested, "Why don't we line the beds with bricks, make proper rows? It would be neat, easier to care for." Hoai smiled faintly and shook her head. "I thought about that too, but it's expensive now. We'd have to buy bricks, pay for transport." Ka frowned slightly, then stood up with resolve. "Don't worry about that. I have a friend who sells bricks, I'll handle it. Since the bike's here anyway, I'll go get them now." Before Hoai could protest, he was already gone in a cloud of dust, leaving her and Ha staring at each other in surprise. Left alone, Ha and Hoai rested for a few minutes, sipping cool water before getting back to work. The steady thud of the hoe striking the soil blended with the cheerful chirping of birds in the trees overhead. Though the midday sun had softened, sweat still streamed down their faces, soaking their shirts. Ha slipped off his outer shirt and tossed it onto a chair, while Hoai removed her hat, letting the breeze weave through her damp hair. They worked in silence, but their rhythms seemed in sync, each step, each stroke of the hoe flowing together as if guided by the same beat. Ha focused on carving straight furrows into the soil, his strong hands moving with practiced precision, his gaze intent and steady. Watching him, Hoai felt a quiet peace stirring within her. Since Hung had been so busy, it was Ha who had often been by her side, lightening the burden of farm work with his steady presence. Soon, lythieuca returned with a cartload of bricks. He unloaded them in the yard, but had to hurry off again for urgent work. Ha studied the pile and nodded, then asked Hoaica to fetch a few bamboo stakes and some rope. Measuring carefully, he stretched the rope across the furrows and, with the skill of a seasoned builder, began laying the bricks neatly, one by one, in straight lines. Hoaica busied herself as well, pushing the wheelbarrow back and forth, ferrying each load of bricks into the garden. Before long, the vegetable beds took shape, tidy, square, and pleasing to the eye. Looking at the garden now dressed in its new order, both sat down at the edge, smiling with quiet satisfaction. In that simple joy, the day's exhaustion melted away, leaving only a warm glow of contentment in their hearts. Several days had passed, yet Hoaica still hadn't heard any news from Hung. Her heart burned with worrying, unable to rest for even a moment. She wondered if he had managed to resolve his debts, or if new troubles had piled on. More than ever, she longed to move back into her own home. The road back and forth was far, and the empty house, left unattended for so long, made her increasingly uneasy. That morning, Tony finally returned to school. His cheerful chatter with his friends gave Hoaica a small sense of relief. She seized the moment to head out to the garden and harvest winter gourds. A woman she had met at the market recently had asked her to set some aside, if they ripened, and the thought gave her determination. At least there was a way to sell them and keep life going. In the kitchen, a bunch of bananas had ripened, their sweet fragrance filling the air. His mother planned to make banana cakes that day. She suggested that once Hoaica returned with the gourds, the two of them could go to the market together. Selling side by side would feel less lonely, and perhaps even cheerful. The gourd patch lay on a hilltop, where morning dew still clung to the leaves, sparkling under the early sunlight. The dirt path was steep and uneven, but Hoaica was used to it by now. She tightened her sleeves and moved with brisk steps. Today, she knew she couldn't stay home to help the older woman, but reassured herself, as long as I can sell the gourds, sell the bananas, at least it will ease part of the burden. And hopefully soon, Hung will return to bring Tony and me back to our old home. That thought alone made her step steadier as she pushed through the weeds along the path. Sitting quietly inside the old house that a friend had lent him, Hung let his eyes wander across the room. For plain walls, a worn wooden table, a few piles of case files stacked carelessly in the corner. Everything felt both familiar and unbearably heavy. He sighed. His chest weighed down. On one side was his work, the duty he had devoted so many years to. On the other was his family, Hoaica and Tony, the two people he could never abandon. Hung had already made his choice. He could not leave. Not now, not when mother and child needed him most. He had to stay, to protect them, to rebuild their home. He knew he couldn't rely forever on a friend's roof. He had to create a true home for his little family, no matter how difficult it might be. He sat down, carefully gathering the scattered files, stacking them neatly in preparation for handover. His police uniform lay across his lap. He ran his hands along the folds, smoothing them gently. So many memories, so many years of service, now set aside, each crease cut into his heart. Yet he reminded himself, the job will always be there, I can return one day. But Hoaica and Tony, they are my only ones. If I leave now, who will stay to protect them? At last, he pulled a sheet of paper toward him and picked up his pen. Slowly, he wrote his request to temporarily suspend duty. Each word carried the weight of his heart, each line soaking into the page as deeply as the burden pressed into his soul. When the letter was finished, he sat in silence, staring at it, hoping that Hoaica would understand this choice, painful as it was. For it was a decision made out of love, and out of the deepest responsibility, to her and to their little boy. Hoai carried a heavy basket of gourds on her shoulder, while his mother held a tray of golden, fragrant banana cakes. The two of them walked slowly along the village road, their laughter echoing with each step. Along a narrow lane, a group of children were jumping rope, their faces smudged with dust but their eyes sparkling bright. Seeing them, his mother stopped, smiling kindly as she handed each child a warm banana cake. The children chirped their thanks, their tiny hands cradling the cakes as if they were treasures. Hoai stood quietly beside her, a wave of warmth rising silently within her heart. When they reached the village soccer field, the shouts of young men playing ball filled the air. The sweet aroma of the cakes quickly drew their attention. Spotting the two women with their baskets, the group rushed over to buy and support them. Laughter, chatter, the clinking of coins dropping into pockets, all blended into a lively, yet humble harmony. Before long, all of Hoai's gourds had been sold, and his mother's tray of cakes was empty. They exchanged a smile, sweat glistening on their foreheads, but their hearts light. A day of hard work had been repaid with simple joy and the quiet warmth of sharing. Hung stepped into the yard of his house, just as Ha was walking back from the road. A quick exchange revealed that Ha had taken Tony to school early that morning, and then gone to work, but when he arrived, the order had been cancelled, so he had no choice but to return. The two men gave each other a slight nod of greeting before wheeling their bikes inside. A strange feeling stirred in Hong's chest, something both familiar and uncertain. They sat waiting on the porch, but Hoai was nowhere in sight. Hong grew restless. Today, he had come with something important to say, something he had pondered for days and could no longer put off. He thought to himself that if he couldn't see her now, he would simply take his leave. Just then, the sound of footsteps and a familiar voice drifted in from the lane. Hoai appeared with his mother, carrying a basket brimming with fresh vegetables. The moment her eyes met Hong's, she froze for an instant, then offered him a gentle smile. Hong could only exhale a quiet sigh of relief. Turning to his mother and Ha, he spoke softly, "Auntie, Ha. I'd like a private word with Hoai." Mother and son exchanged a look. In that fleeting moment, both seemed to understand what was about to unfold. They silently nodded, though they knew the day would come when Hoai would return to her own home. The thought of the house growing suddenly empty without her presence left a hollow ache. Over these past months, she had become like family to them, and the idea of her leaving brought with it an undeniable sense of loss. Outside on the porch, the wind drifted in softly from the fields. Hoai and Hong sat side by side, his eyes deep in thought, his voice steady but low. "The truth is, these past few days I didn't call you, not because I was too busy, but because I didn't want to keep borrowing his mother's phone. I wanted to tell you directly, the department has decided to transfer me far away, 130 kilometers from here. One term would be 5 years, and even then there's no guarantee I could return. I thought about it a lot, and in the end, I wrote a request to temporarily leave my post. I'll only go back once everything in our family is settled." He lowered his head, exhaling heavily, his hand clenching slightly. "I know, making a decision like this is reckless. I'm only afraid you won't support me." Hoai froze. She looked at him, her heart tightening. Her voice trembled, heavy with worrying. "Why did you decide so quickly? You've had such a stable career for so many years. If you quit now, what will you do later? Even if you were far from me and Tony, you could still visit us, but once you give up this job, it won't be easy to get back. I'm afraid you'll suffer even more." Hong took her hand gently, his voice firm yet overflowing with affection. "Don't worry. I won't let you and Tony be deprived. There's always work to be found. What matters is that I can stay by your side. Of course I regret it. I regret it deeply, but right now, this is the only choice that feels right. Her eyes welled up, shimmering in the fading light. She sighed, then slowly nodded. If that's your decision, then I'll support you, but I want this. Since you're only staying temporarily at your friend's house, why don't you move back with me to the old house? We can live under the same roof and take care of each other. At that, a warm smile touched Hong's lips, his eyes softening after so many tense days. He nodded firmly. Yes, I've thought the same. Let's ask permission from Hoai and his mother, then clean up and move back. I want to live with you and Tony, like a real family. Inside the humble yet cozy house, his mother and son were sitting together when Hung and Hoai stepped in. Politely interrupting, Hung bowed his head slightly, his voice sincere. Auntie, these past days, thanks to you both, Hoai and her son have had a shelter, a place of peace. Today, I'd like your permission to bring Hoai back to her own home. I hope you will agree. His mother looked at the two of them, her eyes flickering with sadness. She sighed softly, her voice trembling. I knew. Sooner or later this day would come. Everyone must return to their own home. But truth be told, I will miss her dearly. Ha sat quietly beside her, then looked at Hung and spoke firmly. If you take Hoai back, you must take good care of her. She has gone through so much here. My mother and I have treated her like family. Hung tightened his grip on Hoai's hand, his voice deep yet resolute. I promise, Auntie. I will protect Hoai and Tony with everything I have. I won't let those painful days happen again. Sitting beside him, Hoai's eyes brimmed red, her voice choked with emotion. I am so grateful to you both. Thank you for giving me another chance at life, for helping me in the hardest time. I will never forget this kindness. I'll bring Tony to visit often, and when things settle down, I'll prepare a proper meal to invite you both over to celebrate. With that, she stood to gather her belongings. As she did, his mother approached gently, placing her rough, calloused hand on Hong's shoulder. Her voice broke with affection. Hung, honestly, I'll miss her so much once she leaves. She's been no different from a daughter to me. From now on, you must love her and care for her, and for the little boy too. The two of you must be happy. Hung bowed his head slightly, his eyes shimmering with tears. In that moment, without the need for more words, it was as if a sacred vow had been made. The little house slowly sank into silence. On the porch, his mother and son quietly stood watching. Hoai's figure faded away at the end of the alley, beside Hung and a simple bag heavy with memories. The motorbike rolled forward, a trail of dust rising behind, leaving in their hearts an empty space that stretched endlessly. They had always known this day would come, yet when the door finally closed, the quiet of the house became painfully clear. His mother let out a soft sigh, her eyes still fixed on the road ahead, while Hoai stood beside her, his hand unconsciously tightening. In both their hearts, the same hope lingered, that Hoai, the woman who had once found shelter here as though it were her second home, would now find peace and happiness in the house that truly belonged to her.
Ngôi nhà nhỏ dần chìm vào khoảng lặng, trước hiên mẹ con anh Hà lặng lẽ đứng nhìn theo. Bóng Hoai khuất dần phía cuối con ngõ, bên cạnh anh Hùng và túi đồ đơn sơ mà nặng trĩu bao kỷ niệm. Liệu chặng đường sắp tới có nhẹ nhàng với Hoai và anh Hùng? Hãy để lại một bình luận để chúc phúc cho họ nhé.